Okay, that's now running for you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. This is the Finance, Economic Development, Corporate Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Tuesday the 28th of July. Can I request mobile phones on silent, please, so we don't get any disturbances? Okay, thank you. First of all, comments from members of the public. Joe, do we have any comments from the members of the public?
We've not been notified of any, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. Then I would like to move on, please. Register of attendance. Okay, first of all, do we have any apologies for absence? And then I'll go through through who's in attendance.
We have Councillor Ian Stokes here substituting for Councillor Linda Wootton. We are just trying to find out whether Councillor Morgan is joining us or not. Okay,
so I'm going to go through everybody's names. If you can just shout that you're here, please. Councillor Bob Adams.
Present.
Councillor David Bellamy.
Present.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
Present.
Councillor Phil Knowles.
Present.
Councillor Charmaine Morgan. Okay, we'll wait for her attendance. Councillor Ian Stokes substituting for Councillor Linda Wootton.
Present.
And Councillor John Dawson.
Present.
Okay, thank you. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Mark Whittington, sorry.
I'm here as well. Unfortunately, I'm having video issues, so I'm here by audio only. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Whittington. Yeah, fair enough. Great. Let's move on. Are there any disclosures of interest?
Chairman, I'm also here, and I'd like my presence recorded, please.
Okay, that's fine. You're here as a guest rather than a member of the committee, but it's great to have you here, Councillor Baxter. Okay, thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest? As a reminder, you're able to declare any interest at any time. I'll move on from that. Item 4, the action notes of the meeting held on the 30th of June. Did everyone receive the action notes from the meeting held on the 30th of June? Does anybody have any comments on those? Okay. I have a comment from Jackie first. Do you want to comment on these, Jackie, or were you just marking that you were present? Okay. Okay, fair enough. I'll go through the comments then. Councillor Phil Dilks.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. There's quite a lot to say on the action notes, if I may. First of all, on a general point, can I express disappointment that the action notes from the last very busy meeting, and there are a lot of action notes, as we appreciate, came out only a couple of business days ago as a supplementary report to the agenda. I'm particularly concerned, given the concerns that were raised directly with the Chief Executive during the last meeting, asking the Chief Executive to address what can be done to the long-standing issue of late papers in this council. And that also came after, at the end of the last meeting, our Councillor Adams actually raised this very point and said, could he be assured that we would get the action notes of this meeting, of the last meeting, in very good time and not a couple of business days before the meeting. Well, it's happened exactly as before. So disappointment there. Turning to the, do you want to deal with that first?
Mr. Chairman, I can probably answer that, if that's okay.
Councillor Whittington, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the action notes got sent to me to verify. Unfortunately, I was away on holiday, so I as soon as I got back from holiday, I passed them through. So I suspect that accounts for the delay, Councillor Dilks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. I wonder if we can go through all the delivery points that were asked for at some point. I'm not sure they've all been fulfilled, and I know there does appear to be a
Councillor Dilks, the next item on the agenda is updates from those, and we'll go through the action notes there. So at this stage, we're just making sure that this is an accurate record of that meeting. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll go to the top of page 8 first then, if I may. And yeah, this one is you made a very good, what I thought was a very good suggestion that we can avoid confusion and make the financial reports much more accessible to members of the public, not to mention members of this committee, by splitting the general fund away from the HRA information. And I just thought that should have appeared as an action note, possibly then generating a report from senior officers to look at the idea and see if it is feasible, instead of it just being in the small print, if I can call it that, of the report and not as an action note. Do you want to deal with that one? I've got more.
You know, I can comment on that, actually. I mean, actually, I think the way that was raised, that was an example. What I said at the time was I think that there's still more work to be done on making the accounts accessible. For example, the example that you've just given. And I think what what Mark and I have suggested is that we'd like to have a discussion at some future stage as to other ideas to make that to make the accounts more accessible, be that a workshop or be that a report or be that some other piece of work that needs to be done. So I don't think that's been lost, Councillor Dilks, but I actually think it's more than just doing one. We need to do more than just one thing to make the accounts more accessible. So I was content that that wasn't an action point, in that that's a wider piece of work than one action point.
I'm happy with that, thank you. I just, as you say, I didn't want to lose the point. I just thought it was a very good one, and I accept that you know there's wider. So I do accept that.
Sorry, Chairman, can I just come in on that?
Yeah, please do, Adam. Sorry.
Yeah, it's we have noted that, and we are taking that back. Me and Richard have discussed about this going forward, so it isn't lost, Councillor Dilks. We are very much aware of that still in the pipeline. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I suppose this might be a similar one, Chairman, if I can. But on the list, on page 9, there's the list of the following items to be considered at a future meeting. There was, within the debate that we had, and I think again it came from you, Mr. Chairman, that financial reports would achieve more and be more helpful if they each and every time contained a section on lessons learned for the future. This may be a similar thing, but again, I just don't want to lose that point. That actually isn't in as an action note. Can I say?
I know that Councillor Stokes has been doing some work on this. Councillor Stokes, do you want to comment on that, Adam Stokes?
I was going to say, I don't think my father would speak on that. No, we will be, because obviously we're going to the budget OSC in August, so we are going to be doing some work on what lessons we've learned with regards to savings that we've put in the budget previously. So that is another thing pretty similar to the last point that Councillor Dilks made, that things are moving forward with that.
I'm grateful for that point. I'm grateful for the reminder there, Councillor Dilks. It's definitely something I'm going to be looking for when we go through the budgeting process, as I know you will. Councillor Dilks.
Yeah, I just thought that, again, don't want to lose that one, because it is a good idea, and it's the same as we now put in all reports a paragraph or a heading, you know, on impact on climate change, which is a positive thing. And I just think the lessons learned is you know, why didn't we think of putting that in before, and let's do it, sort of thing. I actually come now to the page 1314, which is the Future High Streets Fund. As a committee, there clearly was a consensus of concern about the lack of meaningful pre-scrutiny on this issue. And the point wasn't just made by myself, but by others, and several times by yourself, Mr. Chairman. And I remember you saying that we regret that the Economic Scrutiny Committee was not involved earlier and should have been. And you may recall, after your summing up at the end of the debate, I asked you to clarify exactly what we were resolving as a committee. You quite rightly pointed out that comments on the report were generally positive, as they were, other than the fact that we were not consulted earlier. and other than concerns over governance of the town team that had been suggested in the report. And you said that with these 2 points incorporated, we as a committee are happy to support the bid. Unfortunately, the notes and the resolution in them does not reflect that. If you have a look, and before the resolution on page 14, nearly at the bottom, the action notes do state that the committee asked that their regret at not having seen the proposal earlier be noted, but noted to who? You know, unless it's no good talking to ourselves. These things have to go out to, I would have thought we were recommending to the cabinet, and so that brings me to the question as to what was this committee's response to the report to cabinet on the 7th of July, following our scrutiny. What was said, and I do note with not a little irony that it was recorded that our scrutiny, that in the agenda for that cabinet meeting, it was recorded that our scrutiny of the future High Streets bid on June the 30th came too late for a written report to cabinet because it was after the cabinet agenda had been printed, despite the fact I know that supplementary papers to cabinet were issued on the 3rd of July. I don't recall concerns of this cabinet being raised, concerns of this committee being raised at cabinet on the 7th of July. I felt we were just another rubber stamp to tick the box that the bid had been pre-scrutinised and approved. But the concerns of this committee were raised at full council, only by me. I was disappointed that members of this committee, who signed up to those concerns on the 30th of June, preferred to dismiss them when I raised them, saying things like, oh, let's not worry about process. But I've got to say, if I may, as a former leader of this council stated at that shambolic meeting of the full council, we have got to start getting these basics right. I am worried about process, and I'd like to know more about the process of these minutes. I thank Councillor Whittington for explaining, the sign-off in this particular case. But I just think it's so disappointing. And if we don't register these things and actually pass them on to cabinet, what are we there for? And we seem to have softened down what we said in the actual meeting. I just don't think it's not worthy. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for those comments, Councillor Dilks. I do know that the 2 points that you mentioned, and they were the 2 key observations of the committee, that governance arrangements for the town team would be shared with members. That is captured in the minutes.
Yeah.
Top of page 14, and the committee.
I accept that, Mr. Chairman, but it's not part of our resolution. And anyway, how are we going to get those? We're not asking anyone for them. We're just saying, we expect that we'll be told.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, fair enough, but okay, so I think that minute should probably be changed to say that those governance arrangements should be reported back to this committee. I mean, the committee did note its regret that but the Economic Development Committee of the Council did note its regret that we've not been consulted on an economic development policy. I do take your point about the unfortunate timings of various minutes and meetings, and that point is noted, and that point is noted. Do you have any other points, Councillor Dilks?
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other? Sorry, I'm just. Okay. Forgive me if I skip anybody here. Councillor Knowles, please. Oh, sorry. Apologies. Can I go to Councillor Adams? I'm taking the order in the wrong order. Apologies, Councillor Knowles. It's Councillor Adams next, then Councillor Knowles. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, page 5. It says a list of the location of SKDC owned recreational facilities, etc. Will that be being dealt with, please, under item 5 of the agenda, updates from previous meeting?
Yeah, we'll come back to that on the updates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Knowles, again, specifically, just on the minute or on the action notes, are these an accurate reflection of the meeting? Councillor Knowles.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Just on item 6, on the paragraph towards the bottom, beginning, a member commented that the outturn report was signed off on the 16th of June. We seem to have this problem about accepting that 2019-20's budget was optimistic or ambitious, but it was established in February this year at this meeting that it was acknowledged by the director at that time that it was not realistic. And even the minutes now are trying to suggest that it was ambitious, but then they say next year will be more achievable. And then later on, Mr. Stokes says we're not unrealistic, and then this year's ambitions will be more realistic. Well, if they are more realistic, it implies, more than implies, it's by definition says that it weren't realistic last year. They weren't achievable last year. We've established it in February. It was admitted quite clearly by the director that, that some of the ambitions were not realistic. Why do we keep having to pretend that they were? And 2019 and 20 is gone. I'm not interested in trying to bring it up and trying to worry about it or trying to point fingers at people. All the fact is that it was, and that the next budget that we've had was more realistic, and hopefully it's very realistic, and that any amendments that's made in September will equally be realistic, and not kidding ourselves that something is right when it's wrong. It was unrealistic last year. It is now hopefully realistic during the course of this year, and any amendments in September should be realistic. I'm not worried about 1920 anymore, the 1920 thing. It was a fact of life, and it was agreed it was a fact of life last February. And why would you keep putting minutes there, sort of hedging it, saying it was ambitious, not unrealistic? It was ambitious and it was unrealistic, and that's fact.
Okay, those comments are noted. Does anybody want to comment on that? Those comments are noted, Councillor Knowles. Those comments are noted, and we'll obviously return to that when we see the proposals for next year's or the budget amendment. But those comments are noted. Okay, does anybody else have any comments on the action notes?
Mr. Chairman, I'm awfully sorry. If you just allow me to come back, I forgot one very small point, and I can't remember exactly where it is now in the action notes. But when we were talking about the disabled facilities grants, it's on page 8, 2/3 of the way down. I did ask for year-on-year figures on that, and we're told that they would be forthcoming. I think that's been missed out as an action note. I'd appreciate if we could reinstate that.
Okay, thank you. If we can reinstate that, please, or if we can add that. I just have one point as well. At the bottom of page 11, the performance reports. We've been seeing these performance reports for a year or so, and my comment about the ambition for them being in the public domain, the response I received was that they were amendments or appendices to council reports. Well, I'm pretty sure I asked I'm pretty sure that we all agreed that wasn't good enough. We need to have a timetable for when these are going in the public domain. I feel that's a question I've asked multiple times. So whilst I'm not expecting an answer today, I would like an action noted on that this committee requires a timetable for when these reports are going to be available on the website. Let me be absolutely clear, we want them available on the website. And I'd like to understand the timetable. That was the ambition. Burying them behind reports is the same as burying them 100 metres below ground when it comes to the general public. I think we need to have a time. If that's going to be the end of the year, fine. But I think we should have a timetable for when they're on the website. If we can capture that, please, as an action note. Apologies, that should have been made clearer by me earlier. Okay, well, if there are no further comments on the action notes, I'd like to go to the updates on those action notes from the previous meeting. Given that Bob requested to comment on that, can I go to Bob first, please? Councillor Adams, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, there's one or two where information was requested. One was the recreational facilities. There's another one on page 7, a breakdown of asset revaluation and so on. When can we expect to receive those, I think would be the question, Chairman, if they're not contained in this item 5 updates today. Thank you.
That's it. Okay, so who would that be with?
I was
Well,
going to say,
I'll take the asset revaluation. That was sent out by Joe on Sunday, so you should have received that information.
Mr. Chairman, if I can come in, hopefully most of the action should be picked up as part of the table that was circulated on Sunday. There was a further email that was sent on Monday which captured the action in respect to the Leisure Centre Working Group.
Did you see both emails, Councillor Adams?
I've certainly seen the one about the working group in inverted commas that never took place, Chairman, but no, I'm afraid I get bogged down with planning matters at the minute, so no, I didn't pick up the one on Sunday.
Okay, if I can ask you...
I have picked up the one on the leisure centres, which I'd like to refer to at some future time at this meeting, if I may.
Okay, if I can ask you to locate that first. Does anybody else have any any comments on the updates from the previous meeting? Councillor Dilks.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm just picking up that point, and I appreciate and I thank the officers for sending out things on Monday, which is, let's face it, a bit late, but if they are having to work on Sunday, and I thank them for that, it does raise the question whether there are sufficient resources in the Democratic Services Department. I just make that point. Because it's not the first time, and it does seem that late papers and things like that. Are we functioning properly? Are there sufficient? Are we backed up enough with the? Are there sufficient resources? I don't know if Joe wants to comment, but thank you.
I think it perhaps would be a bit unfair to put Joe on the spot to answer that one.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I'm sorry.
I think we're losing her connection. No. I think we're.
Chairman, it's worth raising that point, though.
It's worth raising the point. We'll note that and get a response from the chief executive. I think we'll note that. Moving on, if you have no further points, Councillor Dilks.
No, thank you.
Councillor Knowles.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Very briefly, if I may. Is it necessary to have all the action points on one document? The question to number 3, which is a list of 6 places where there are recreation grounds, playing fields, presumably could have been on the afternoon of the last meeting and been sent out very quickly. It doesn't have to wait till the day before to send it out. And it still isn't the answer to the question, which, if you recall, I first raised in February. It still doesn't answer that question. I'll get in touch with Joe or somebody and tell them what the question was again, not in this meeting, but outside the meeting, so they can give me the information I asked for. It wasn't a great deal, but that piece of information, a list of 6 recreation ground playing fields that SKDC own, presumably was available within an hour, within 10 minutes, within 5 minutes of the last meeting. And yet we have to wait till this Sunday, so somebody doing overtime, to get it out. It just seems ridiculous on the grounds of when it's available, let's have it. And secondly, on the fact it still doesn't answer the original question, which originally the Scrutiny officer said that she'd not answered for some reason, and it's gone on from there right through the last 6-7 months. But I'll do that privately. I'll do that outside the meeting, ask for that information. But it really does represent the delays which are unnecessary in presenting with information. That information could have been available within a day. I could have responded within a couple of days and said, please, can you expand it to include this? And we would have all been sorted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. They're noted.
Chairman, can I come back on the question of the report on the working group for leisure? Because, yes, we have had a 3-page document. I only got this, I think, yesterday. And it doesn't answer the question as to why this committee having requested a working group and 4 members having been volunteered and appointed to it, that in fact there's been absolutely no response to the question of a working group. And I do note in this report that various local members have been consulted or have been involved with it. But this is a council for the whole district, and I would like an answer as to why. And I don't expect it now, Chairman, obviously, but I would like to know why the working group was not called and met as a working group in accordance with the request of this committee.
That's the leisure you're talking about, Bob. Is it?
Sorry?
Excuse me, Chairman, through you. I'll just... Is
Councillor Adams... There is a working group committee, yeah.
That's the working group leisure. Okay, fair enough. I was just reviewing. There's no cabinet member that can answer that, I believe, unless Councillor Stokes, you want to comment on that.
Unfortunately, it's not my area, so I will have to. We'll get the information out to you anyway that is required.
Can we request an urgent response on that rather than as Councillor Knowles says, submitting it with all of the actions? Because I do think that that's something that's been on our action notes now for 2-3 meetings. So, I mean, if the answer to the question, when is the working group going to meet, never, then maybe that's the answer. We just kind of need to hear it. So if we can request an urgent response to that, please. Okay. Are there any other members that want to comment on the updates from the action notes? I just have one comment before we go to the non-members. I've received the list of the asset revaluations. I noticed that that's restricted. I'm guessing it's restricted because of the commercial values that are in there. But the list of assets surely isn't restricted. Walk me through why any of that is not in the public domain. I can perhaps understand why valuations of commercial assets that we may choose to sell at some stage might be considered restricted, but actually knowledge of the assets we've got, that's something that the taxpayer ought to know about. Councillor Stokes, can I ask you to comment on that? Why is it restricted? I'm always nervous of things that are restricted in local councils, and I'd like you to reassure me that this is restricted for a good reason.
Yeah, I will always. I can always do that. It's because it's relating to the financial and business affairs of the organisation. There are some elements in there that. I mean, I'm looking at it myself, to be honest. Do you see what I mean? I think I can understand why an asset that we might want to sell in the future, we'd restrict what we believe it's worth. Which is precisely some reasonable reason why we would have this exempt.
But the other side of that is there's no reason to exempt the list of assets.
Well, you've got to be careful, because don't forget St Martin's Park that's included is a joint venture. I know we own the majority of that area, but that is a joint venture.
Agreed, but that's not my point. My point is the general public needs to know what assets we have. And I think fair enough. Perhaps I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'd like an action note to be taken as to an explanation as to why that's restricted, and could a list of the assets without valuations or be put in the public domain. If we can put that down, I'd like to get a response to that between now and the next meeting. I mean, perhaps that's an unfair question to put you on the spot with. But yeah, there may be a very good reason why they're restricted. I just can't think of it off the top of my head.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to come in. I think Alison may be able to assist with some of this.
Alison?
Hi, Councillor Jill. It's only part of it that's exempt. It's the actual values themselves which are exempt, not the assets.
Okay.
And it's because it was all within one document.
Fair enough. Then I think we should release a version of this document without valuations, just detailing just detailing in the public domain what assets that we have out there, so that the general public do know that we're actually what we're kind of looking at. I think that's useful without detailing those now because we're not in exempt session. Okay, that's the only comment I have. Moving on, Councillor Baxter, you had some comments you wanted to raise.
Thank you, Chair. Mine are on a similar thing to you, I suppose, and that's the information that we have been sent. Can I be absolutely crystal that the information that doesn't have confidential written down the middle of it is not confidential, that it can be put in the public domain, particularly with regard to the leisure response, because I'm not here asking questions about the leisure centre for my own benefit. I'm asking because people in the Deepings, and I'm sure across the district, are interested in what's being said and done. So if there is anything in there that shouldn't be released, that Councillor Barry Dobson has put in there, can somebody please tell me urgently? Apart from that, what Councillor Dobson has sent to us is incorrect on a number of scores. For example, he didn't visit all the leisure centres with local members because he didn't visit the Deepings with local members, as I'm sure Councillor Dilks will verify. So I'm not sure how I challenge that. This isn't perhaps a forum for challenging it, but I'm not sure which forum would be the place to challenge information that we're getting and not getting from the member for leisure, the portfolio holder for leisure. I'm also very disappointed in the lack of information about housing. Yes, I think I did ask for a breakdown of the number of council houses to be provided, but there is no context. All we're told is 14 houses without any plans or targets. I mean, we know that 14 is a derisory number, but it would be handy to know more specifically what the target is and whether or not we can expect any more this year. Thank you, Chair.
I think on your second point, I think that's a point we'll return to when we look at the targets and plans for the corporate services targeting. Thank you for that. That point is noted. Is there anybody that can give Councillor Baxter a response to Councillor Dobson's message or email or submission? Or is that something that we're going to have to request a written response to? I don't believe Councillor Dobson's with us. I think we need to request an urgent response to that, particularly about the confidentiality of that.
If it helps the mind, I've already published it, so I'll unpublish it if somebody tells me that the reason why it shouldn't be published.
That point is noted. Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Yeah, it was just on the question that Councillor Baxter raised about council housing, Chairman. We don't, as a council, build council houses. We work with developers to provide affordable housing and so on. And we will never in this district be able to build ourselves volumes of council housing because we don't own the land. So we're very much dependent on working with our stakeholders and developers, etc., to achieve this. So I think perhaps the question is a little bit ingenuous. We really ought to be asking how many affordable homes, and so embrace the whole of that sort of rented sector in any answer that is given. We'll never ever build any volume of council houses.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I think I'd like to park that issue there, given that that's an issue we could spend the next hour talking about, because I think it's an issue that we will return to. Thank you for raising it, Councillor Baxter. Your points are noted, and thanks for the clarification. If there are no other comments on the updates from the previous meeting, then I'd like to move on to...
just one thing. Can I ask a question, please?
Councillor Knowles, sorry.
May I ask a question? When we were looking at the re-evaluation document, the amounts in there are not the valuations, are they? They are changes in valuations. So they don't reveal anything about the valuation of those properties. Or have I got that wrong?
They are revaluation adjustments, yes.
So they're not evaluations of anything.
No, they're the
It just
valuation.
shows how something has moved. It shows that bone market has moved by £1,000.
Yeah.
But some of the valuations on there are of the commercially sensitive, which is why we wouldn't publish them.
Like what?
I think, as mentioned by Councillor,
Bone market has moved what?
Can
We
you
don't
let
know
the
if
officer
starting point
speak,
is
please, Councillor Knowles?
Or 3 and tuppence.
I think the point's registered. Alison, can you reply, please?
it's
Who's
because
saying that? Who's saying that, please?
Sorry, it's the chair, Councillor Knowles. Councillor Knowles, I think we understand your point. I think your point is that actually this information's not as sensitive as we perhaps think. So, Alison, can you reply to that, please?
it's because the information includes St Martin's Park, and we're in a partnership over developing this asset, so there is some commercial sensitivity over the valuation.
I think that there's okay. Just to pick up Councillor Knowles' point, so would you be prepared to make public everything apart from St Martin's Park?
I'll have to just review this with Richard, and then if we can come back to you with a response.
If you can review that and just come back to us, that's absolutely fine. Are there any further questions? Okay, I'd like to move on. We're moving on to the Welland Procurement Annual Update. And this is in the hands of, is it Councillor Stokes or Alison?
Yeah, I'll start and then I'll pass over to Alison,
Thank you.
Chairman. So this is the first annual report from the Welland Procurement Partnership that's been presented to this committee and provides the summary of the procurement activity for 1920. So what I'm asking is you to consider the annual review from the procurement and make any appropriate recommendations to myself. I mean, this does summarise the activities undertaken by Welland Partnership, Welland Procurement even, in conjunction with South Kesteven District Council. But I'll hand over to Alison, and I think Amy Myers is on the call as well to help with some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stokes. Just before I start presenting, Joe, could you arrange for my permissions to be changed to present, please? Because I need to put a PowerPoint presentation up on the screen. Thank you. As members are aware, the Council has been a member of partner-wide procurement services since 2008. The decision was made to withdraw from the Procurement Lincolnshire Partnership from March 2019, following the withdrawal of several other authorities from the partnership. The Council joined the Welland Partnership, Procurement Partnership from April 2019 for a period of 3 years. A service plan is agreed annually with Welland Procurement, and an annual report is produced which provides details regarding the delivery of the service plan. The annual report for 2019-20 is at Appendix A in this report. As detailed in paragraph 1.6, there were 27 planned procurements. 14 of these were cancelled by the Council for a number of reasons which are detailed in Appendix B to this report on page 14. And of the remaining 13, 9 were delayed and continue to be supported this financial year. Details of the 27 agreed procurements are provided in Appendix B. The procurements completed by Welland Procurement achieved savings of £60,000 in 2019-20, although the remit of this service is wider than just savings, as it also ensures the Council completes compliant procurements, which mitigates the risk of challenge from other suppliers, and also ensures that best value is achieved. This partnership can also provide opportunities for the Council to work collaboratively with other councils in the group. As members are aware, the Council also recruited internal procurement support on a fixed basis to provide procurement support to officers and to improve internal procurement processes across the Council. One of the roles of this officer was to identify the areas where the 300k procurement savings included in the budget could be achieved. As this role is on a fixed term basis, the Council will need to review whether the in-house provision should continue, complement or replace the Welland Partnership. Further information will be provided once the various options have been assessed. I'll now hand over to Amy Myers, who is the Head of Procurement at Welland Partnership.
Morning all, I'm hoping you can hear me.
The presentation's just loading up on the screen, Amy.
Lovely. Alison, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Lovely. Okay, that's fine.
Right, if you just tell me when you want me to move through slides, Amy.
Yeah, will do. Thank you very much, Alison. Right, is that up on the screen now?
It is, yes.
Lovely. Okay, just to let you know, I can't see what slide you're on, so I'll just tell you when to move on, okay?
Okay.
Morning, everybody. So as Alison said, my name is Amy Myers. I'm the Head of Procurement at Welland Procurement. So I'm going to give you a short presentation about the last financial year and cover off some information about Welland. And then hopefully at the end, if you've got any questions, I'll be able to address those, or potentially Alison will be able to address them if they're more specific to South Kesteven. Okay, so on to slide 2, please, Alison. So Welland Procurement Services. Welland is a shared procurement service. We are hosted by Melton Borough Council and provide procurement support services to 8 authorities in total. We provide operational and strategic procurement services. So our strategic procurement services consist of a regular review of contract procedure rules that we share with all 8 authorities. Provision of regularly updated procurement toolkit, which is more of a useful how-to guide that supports the contract procedure rules. Provision of a set of regularly updated procurement template documents used for both quotations and tender, as well as things such as risk registers for contract management. We provide a range of other written guidance, such as contract management training, procurement awareness training, and user guides for bidders. And we provide regular procurement training available for officers at our councils. Next slide, please, Alison. In terms of operational procurement services that we provide full support for all ODU procurement. So what we mean by that is all procurements above the current EU threshold. We do this from project planning through to award. We provide full support for the majority of below EU threshold procurements. Once again, from project planning to award. We provide full support for the majority of framework call-offs, particularly where they involve strategic services. And we also provide advice on quotations, so where it's not an open procurement and it's below your tender threshold. And other issues as well, such as transparency arrangements and FOI requests. Okay, the next slide just shows you who we currently provide procurement support services to. I won't go through all the names, but you can see them there. Okay, on to the next slide. So how does Welland provide operational procurement services? So as Alison's already mentioned, we issue an annual service plan, normally in October, for completion between October and December. And that covers off work for the next financial year. So that's not just work that's actually going live from a procurement point of view, but if it's a larger procurement process that you need to start off doing soft market engagement on that financial year, then that would go on that service plan as well. So it's quite common that, as Alison mentioned, 9 were delayed from last year's service plan onto this year's. That doesn't mean they were delayed for any particular reason or error from the council officer's point of view. A lot of the time it's just that they will straddle 2 financial years. Work is allocated throughout the Welland procurement team, and key contacts have been given to the council so that officers can contact Welland for operational advice. We provide a virtual service, particularly at the moment with COVID, but on a normal business day we're still a virtual service. So our main forms of communication are email and telephone. However, the team does attend all procurement meetings that we're invited to, as well as delivering face-to-face training prior to COVID. All of our templates are available on the Welland portal, so there is a link there. I'm not sure if members will be able to access it. It works based on IP address, so essentially only South Kesteven staff accessing the system from the council login can access it. But if you would like a copy of any of the documentation that you can't access, please let either myself or Alison know. And then we also collate savings and other benefits which are reported on a regular basis, which is quarterly, as part of the Welland board meetings. Okay, on to the next slide, please, Alison. So in terms of updates that we provide to the council, the lead contact from South Kesteven is Richard Wiles. Welland circulates updates to him on a regular basis as when they come through. For example, there were recent procurement policy notes on supplier relief payments and things such as that following COVID, so they get circulated to all members. We provide information on best practice and anything else that's updated as and when it comes through. We also have the quarterly Welland board meetings, the annual report, which is the information that Alison has just summarised, and then staff briefing notes. The latest one we sent through was in June. Okay, next slide. So benefits of Welland procurement membership, as Alison's mentioned. First of all, obviously savings that we can achieve, but not just that, it's about access to a head of procurement resource to advise on strategic issues, contract procedurals and more complex queries. The fact that we as a procurement support service are an active member of the East Midlands Heads of Procurement Board. Compliance means less resource during the procurement and less risk of challenge. There is a possibility of joint procurements and collaborative working, which I think South Kesteven has already benefited from. And there are lessons learned discussions between members, not just at the board meetings, but throughout the year as well. Okay, next slide, please, Alison. So I think Alison's gone through some of this information as part of the report summary, so I won't go through it in detail, but the council does receive visibility on how the service is delivered, with clear roles and responsibilities given between the council and Welland officers. These were agreed by the lead officer for South Kesteven and are published on all of our council's Welland procurement portals, so that staff can easily access and understand the roles and responsibilities. And as mentioned, there is quarterly reports on project activity at the Welland board meetings. Okay, so on the next slide, how has Welland supported the council in the previous financial year? So the whole life savings there shown is the information that's detailed in the report, £60,000. So the year one savings of last financial year were actually just shy of 76,000 and £30,000 savings for this current financial year already. The whole life savings are something different, and I can go into that at the end if anybody would like me to. Contracts that have been awarded to SMEs, so SME is small and medium enterprise, 2 contracts, which equates to 50% of the contracts and 31% of the awarded spend. Contracts awarded to local providers was 1, which equates to 9% of spend. Okay, on to the next slide, please, Alison. So training that we've provided recently, I believe was mentioned in the report, but we've provided several sessions to council officers, I think over February and March, that were in relation to the contract procedurals. So off the back of that training, it has increased the visibility of Welland amongst officers, leading to an increase in engagement and collaborative working between Welland and council staff. There's been an increased awareness of transparency requirements, such as the contracts register and contracts finder. Details of contacts within Welland have been circulated as well, leading to officers approaching us for more ad hoc advice and support. And also it's led to further discussions about more innovative procurement routes, such as dynamic purchasing systems and the council creating their own internal frameworks for current services that you regularly spot purchase at the moment. Okay, on to the next slide. So this just gives you a summary of some of the feedback that we received for the training that was delivered. So as you can see, it was very, very positive feedback that we received from attendees. And the training provided was also supplemented by the awarding a contract via a framework training that is available online on the portal and was circulated to all members. Okay, on to the next slide. In terms of specific project feedback, we do request this after every project that we complete and award. We didn't receive any feedback forms from South Kesteven the last financial year. We do carry out an annual satisfaction survey, as mentioned in the report. So we circulated this year to 119 officers throughout all 8 councils, which unfortunately only resulted in 21 responses. Just to give some context on this, it's actually the first year that we've broadened it out to all staff that have had contact with Welland. Previously, it only went out to the lead contact members at each of the authorities we supported. So that's why there's such a large number that we've emailed this time round. Next year, we are looking to put a non-mandatory question in to try and capture which council each of the responders are from, so that we can provide more detail to each individual council. But in terms of the feedback given, as you can see there, 95% of respondents were either satisfied or very satisfied with the service received, which is an increase of 20% compared to last year. 100% of the respondents found the team helpful and the advice valuable, and 95% of respondents found the templates easy to work with, which is an increase of 16% compared to last year. Okay, on to the next slide, please. So how is Welland looking to support the council throughout this current financial year? So obviously we'll be looking to complete the projects on the service plan. Offering further training to council officers. I believe we're looking to get member training in the diary over several dates in October. We're developing contract management training at the moment, hopeful for being able to deliver that in October or November, if not in person, then virtually via Zoom or Skype. We're flexibly working as a result of COVID-19, offering training, as I just mentioned, and attending meetings virtually. Support the council in adopting any changes in light of the public procurement reform following Brexit. We're exploring opportunities for full online questionnaires on pro-contract, as well as options for packages of support that Welland can offer in relation to contract register compliance. And we're also looking to develop a sustainable procurement strategy that's focused on social value, climate change, and things that are covered under that area. So the last slide before questions, I won't read every item out on this list, but essentially these are some of the documents that are available on the Welland procurement portal. There are others on there, but these are sort of the key ones. And like I said, if you can't access this yourself and would like a copy of it, if you just let myself or Alison know, and we can forward that over to you. So I'll open it up to 20 questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, moving on to questions and comments. Councillor Dilks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Amy, for the presentation. I mean, the way I read it, the council entered into an agreement with Welland Procurement in March last year, and then 6 months later took on temporary staffing resource, to deal with it. So my first question is, did we as a council know that we would be expected to take on this temporary staffing resource? And really what I'm looking for is overall are we spending more or less money on procurement than we were under the previous arrangement with the Lincolnshire partnership? And are we getting better value? I suppose that's the question we're all sort of looking for. But then I'll sort of move on to paragraph 1.11 in our internal report, and we seem to be looking at whether an in-house resource could be more focused, and presumably to give better value. On the previous paragraph, it talks about procurement. The procurement lead has left. Is that the temporary one, or is that someone else? Could you just explain that? Is that an internal, the council appointment? I'm not quite clear. If you could just explain that. Right, moving on to the actual report. In the annual report that we've got before us from Welland, from the Welland procurement, it lists the targets on page 9, and they are effectively 95%, and they say how they've been satisfied, and it's 95% for target 1, target 2, and target 4. And then if we go over the page, it tells us that, you know what, we've made the target exactly on the button, 95%, 95%, and 95%. That sounds very suspicious, I've got to say. Excuse me for being a cynic. But then when we look at the service plan delivery, we see of the 27 procurements, only 4 were delivered. That's 4 out of 27. But the majority of hours were cancelled. We cancelled, you know, the majority of hours, 14 out of 27. So now it's, you know, you could look and say the delivery is 4 out of 14, which is perhaps a little bit more impressive, but it doesn't sound that impressive. I just wondered if you could explain. I appreciate some of these are rolled over, and perhaps COVID's got something to do with it, I don't know, but if you could explain, that would be helpful. And final point, if you go to actually penultimate point, Appendix B talks about items in red, and this is an internal problem. Mine's only in black and white, so those of you reading in black and white, the pink's behind the green, I think. They don't mean much to me, talking about what's in red. But I would like a bit more about Appendix B, the activity report, and it would be interesting to go through those headings and learn a bit more about them. And then finally on Appendix C, page 23, have I read this right or not? When we look at the savings in year 1, and it's alluded to in our report, in the council report, it says that in year 1 there's 75,891 pounds saved, but then the whole life savings are less, 60,230. I don't understand how that can be. Is that a mistake in the report? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Shall I address those, Chairman?
Please, yeah.
I'm afraid my my Skype kicked me out, but I'm hoping that the last point was in relation to the savings. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. So if I go through them one by one, and then if I...
Sorry, the last point was the difference between the savings in year 1 and the whole of life savings being lower than the savings in year 1 on page 23 of the report.
Okay, that's fine. So if I address these one by one, I might hand over to Alison for some of them. But if there's any queries at the end, if I've not addressed it fully, then please let me know. So in terms of the temporary staff resource, and feel free to correct me, Alison, but my understanding was that the temporary staff resource was actually brought in to complement the Welland service. So there are certain things that Welland don't provide, and as mentioned in the report, such as addressing which contracts you can get the savings from. And I believe also there were some concerns over broader compliance and contracts register issues. So I believe that was the reason that the internal resource was brought in. In terms of costs for more or less than what you were paying for Procure Lincolnshire, I don't know what you were paying for Procure Lincolnshire, so I couldn't comment on that, and I would leave Alison to address that point. And I think the report does mention in terms of the council doing an options appraisal as to whether it wants to continue with just Welland and an internal resource, or just an internal resource. So we as a procurement support service will support you in the same manner as we are now, regardless of whether you hand notice in and decide to leave or continue the procurement support. We won't taper off the level of support that we're providing, even if you hand notice in. So just to reassure that point. In terms of 1.11 on the internal report, being more focused, I'm hoping that I've addressed that already. but the internal resource has now left. So where the report comments on the council lead leaving, that is the temporary staff resource that has left. Okay. In terms of the 4 out of 14 on the service delivery plan, so we have completed all procurements that we have been able to. So the ones that have been carried over were either delayed because of council reasons, whether that was internal approvals or holds on budgets or staff resource and capacity issues. I can get you further details on that if you need me to as an action point. And like I said earlier as part of the presentation, it's quite common that procurements will straddle 2 financial years. So I don't have any overly concerns about that, but if you would like me to provide further details on those 9, then please let Alison know, and I can provide that as an action point for your next meeting. In terms of the 95% satisfaction and the concerns that is exactly on the nose, as it were, for the target, I am once again happy to provide the information that supports that. I'm not sure if the annual satisfaction survey has been provided as part of your papers. I don't think it has, but I can provide you the raw information, and I believe Alison already has a copy of that raw information if you would like it. In terms of the savings difference, so how we calculate savings is based on a year 1 saving. So if you've got a 10-year contract and the current spend, for example, is £30,000 per year, and the new provider submits a bid for £25,000. That's a £5,000 saving, but only in year 1, because then at the end of year 1, your current spend is £25,000. So in year 2, it's still £25,000. There's no saving. So in the year 1 savings, that's represented by the 75,891, that captures essentially that first year of the contract's savings. And that's why you've got savings across 2 financial years, because the contracts that we've awarded straddle 2 financial years in their first year. The whole life savings would take into account of that £5,000 across the, let's say, 10 years of the contract. So that would equate to a £50,000 whole life saving, but only a £5,000 pure saving is what we would call it in year 1. So that's why there is a difference. There's no inaccuracies, as it were, in that. And once again, if you would like separate to this for me to provide you the raw data on that, I'm happy to do so. So I'm hoping that's addressed all of the concerns, apart from the ones that I've handed over to Alison to respond to, Chairman.
Thank you for that. I'm sure Alison will come back, but I just wonder, Amy, if you could address on the 4 out of 14, if I can put it that way, is that a similar position to the other partners in the partnership?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
so that's quite business as usual, as it were, where procurements will straddle. It's very rare for procurements to fall very neatly within 1 financial year.
Appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. That's all right.
Okay, moving on. Councillor Adams.
Chairman, excuse me. I thought Alison was going to come back on.
Sorry, Alison, you're going to come back on Councillor Dilks's point. Apologies, thanks. You're on mute, Alison.
Sorry. I'll have to come back to you on the cost of the Procurement Lincolnshire partnership, so I'll send that out to members. Amy's right, we took on a temporary procurement officer. The point of this was the officer was to look at more targeted savings, so to review the contracts throughout the council to establish where the £300,000 target included in last year's budget and included going forwards, to identify which contracts there could be significant savings achieved on, and then to drive forward the procurement savings from those. If you remember, we did have we had another procurement officer that was also working on that who left the council. So we will consider whether going forward we want to replace the procurement lead who's leaving at the end of this month to continue that piece of work.
Thank you for that. I think I was really asking, and you perhaps can't answer it right now, but it's whether or not we knew when we entered this new partnership that we would need to hire a new procurement officer. Was that expected?
Yes, because we'd also had a similar officer working for the council when we were also working with Procurement Lincolnshire. They were also working on the £300,000 identified procurement saving. So when we entered the Welland partnership, we knew that we would continue that having a procurement lead within the council for a temporary period of time so that they could deliver those targeted savings.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Many of the points I was going to raise have already been dealt with through Councillor Dilks, but there's one, if I can take you to Appendix B, page 2 of Appendix B, or 14 of all the documents, and we're looking at abandoned and deleted projects. And the ones I'm interested in, Chairman, are where it says contract extension utilised. Now, I'm assuming there that we had a contract, say, for asbestos management. The one I'm particularly looking at is disabled adaptations. So presumably we had a contract with a contractor, say, up till the end of year 2019-2020, and then we extended that contract into 2020-2021. Am I on the right lines here? Is there anybody that can answer me that one, please? Am I reading that information correctly?
Alison?
You are, yes. Often when we go out to tender, there'll be options within a contract where it will say the contract is for a period of time, but then there'll be the option to extend it by a certain number of years, and then it's up to the council whether they want to utilise that contract extension or not.
Okay, so I'm assuming then, looking at disabled adaptations, that the contractor that we had up to March 2020 continued after March 2020, in other words, into the year 2020-2021. Is that a reasonable assumption, or is that an accurate assumption?
It is a reasonable assumption, but what I'll do is I will follow this up with the service area and then come back to you and confirm.
Yeah, it is very important, Alison, because I am aware that people that have been expecting adaptations to start in January of this year, it never happened, not because of COVID, but because of the contract situation. And I'm told that we have to go out to procurement and all sorts of other issues as far as documentation is concerned and forms, etc., which has meant in one case a very severe situation with a family where a 22-year-old daughter was not able to get the adaptations done that they were promised by this time this year, which they were promised in sort of October, November time. Might have been a bit later, but the back end of last year. So that is really where I'm coming from. We don't seem to. This is a general comment, Chairman. I do apologise for it, but we don't seem to get top side of this adaptation business. And as I think Paul Thomas is still with us, as he knows, I'm pursuing this because I think we have some fundamental issues in terms of internal processes.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman.
That comment's noted. Moving on, Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Chairman. Just two quick questions, if I may. One for Alice and one for Amy. What is the total spend with Welland in year 2019-20 and thus far in this budget year? And for Amy, what is the financial structure of the Welland procurement situation? How are you structured? Where do your profits go, and so on?
So the cost of Welland procurement is £41,000 per annum. So we've incurred approximately £10,000 to date this year.
That's the total, is it?
The total, yeah, the annual cost of the service is £41,000. It is index linked, so you will see an inflationary increase each year.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so from a financial structure point of view, we are hosted by Melton Borough Council. So the income comes into Melton Borough Council.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Moving on, Councillor Whittington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, I'm struggling a little bit following some of this financial information through. I don't think the information in the appendices is. I think it needs panic. I think we need more information, because it would be really useful on some of these where we've got estimated annual values, estimated total values. Yeah, I mean, I can see that obviously the estimated total value is the total value over the contract. But I mean, I've been sitting here. I mean, some are obvious in terms of you can divide one by the other to get the total to get the length of the contract. But I think some information on there about the length of the contract would be really useful, because it just saves somebody like me who's an accountant having to sit there, because I'm interested in doing this, to just I admit I only picked this report up fairly late because I've been away on holiday, but my first look at it, I'd like the opportunity to come back with a whole series of sort of more detailed observations when I've had a chance to have a proper look through it. But speaking as an accountant, I think it goes so far. There's a lot more stuff in there I think I'd like to see, and I think I'd like to see a little bit more clarity around how some of the stuff's provided. One obvious thing I'm struggling with is the table at the bottom of page 10, where we talk about the 1920 savings in year as being £75,000, well, £76,000. Then the whole life savings only being 60,000. I'd have assumed that if these were just savings in year relating to just in-year contracts, that the savings of 75,000 would also be the whole life savings, and yet the amount seems to be different. I can see below for 2021 it makes logically more sense. We've had nearly £30,000 savings in year, but over the course of the contracts we expect 114,000. But it's just anomalies like that, Mr. Chairman, that just make me a bit edgy and a bit concerned that I think the information could be presented in a more sort of transparent, well, not I would say transparent, but with a little bit more clarity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Do you require a response to that, or?
I think, yes, I'd certainly like a response to that specific question on page on the bottom of page 10. I also picked up the point I was going to raise, the issue that Councillor Adams has just raised around the disabled facilities stuff, because again I've got a piece of casework at the moment where I've got somebody potentially hasn't been receiving the adaptations they've been promised, so I've got concerns around that as well. But I'd appreciate the opportunity to sort of maybe send a proper look through it, a more detailed list of observations and ways potentially to just improve the readability of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Just on this savings and whole of life savings, because that's cropped up a couple of times, and it's a point that I've noted as well. For savings to be higher in year one than they are in the whole of life, that can only be possible if the savings are front loaded and it's costing more in years 3 to 10. Then you can achieve what you've just said there. You could achieve a lower whole of life savings than you get in year one, because the cost goes up from years 3 to 10. I mean, that's the only way I think you could achieve those numbers, i.e. the savings going down over the length of the contract. Can you comment again about that, Amy? Because I don't think it's been fully understood.
Yeah, okay, absolutely fine. So where in 2019-20, where you've achieved essentially the large majority of that year one savings, £70,000 worth of savings, is on a project that was essentially a 1 month project. It looks probably like a consultancy project. Mm-hmm. So £70,000 worth of saving is all within one financial year. There is no whole life savings because all of the savings are in year one. So how the savings are reported, like I said, is the whole life wouldn't wouldn't encapsulate the beyond. So what I can do is, what would probably be clearer, particularly to the financial and figure-minded of you, would be for me to do this as a spreadsheet and send it through to you so that you can see all the information, and that can be circulated to all members.
I think, Amy, that's absolutely perfect, because without seeing the thought processes behind how the numbers have been calculated, when I go through this stuff, I'm second guessing, and I don't like to second guess. I'd much rather have the spreadsheet so I can go through and do the analysis myself and understand how the spreadsheet's been put together and how the numbers have been driven through it. Thank you.
Lovely, that's fine. I'll send that to Alison later today for circulation, if that's okay.
So basically, just in summary, what you're saying is that there is a dramatic 1 month saving in year one, which will be partially offset by savings in years 2 to 10 that are not quite as good?
So no, this was only a 1 month contract.
Sure, but the whole of life is over 10 years. So
no, so the 10-year was an example, if it was a 10-year contract, for example. So when I was talking about it earlier, it was very much an example basis. So this contract, because it's only a 1 month contract, and that month happens within one financial year, that saving is all within year one.
Okay, we await the spreadsheet. I think we are describing the same thing here. Okay, if there are no other members...
Sorry, on that, Graham, just the thing that's cropped to mind. The only other thing that potentially might explain that is that the savings are £75,000 in year one, but if you've used discounted cash flows, potentially you might. Amy, when you're telling these savings, do you do discounted cash flow forecasting over the full length of the contract? Because potentially that, from a technical point of view, that might go some way towards explaining it. Thank you.
No, essentially.
Okay, so we await that spreadsheet with interest. Okay, if there are no other members to question, I have a series of questions, largely to yourself, Amy. Well, thank you for the presentation. First of all, I'd like to just pick up on Councillor Knowles' point about your legal entity structure and what you are, and you know, the company. I don't think I fully understand that. So you're hosted by Melton, but you are a separate profit-making legal entity.
No, we're not. We're not a separate legal entity. No.
Okay, so you're a department within Melton Council.
Yes.
Okay, I mean that goes to answering a little bit of my question as to how you're resourced. In that, you know, we're paying 41 grand. You've got 7 other councils. Are all the other councils paying the same amount of money?
Yes, apart from one other council which has a different arrangement with us.
Okay, are they paying more or less?
Less, but they don't get a full-time service.
Okay, so 7 times 41 grand, roughly about 300 grand is the resources that run your organisation, yeah?
Yeah.
And there's 5 of you within Melton Council. You've got to be subsidised by Melton Council then, yeah? Do you have subsidised? So Melton effectively pay more?
Yes.
Okay. And the training, you mentioned the training. Is that an extra charge? Do we pay extra for that?
So we include training, broadly, we say 1 per year. I don't believe it's actually as part of the SLA. So as part of Goodwill, we provide 1 per year. And then anything further or in addition to that, we would look to charge for. So obviously the ones that we provided February and March, I think we did... I want to say 3 sessions. We didn't charge for any of those, and the council member sessions that we're due to book in for October, we won't be charging for those.
So you're confirming that we've not paid anything for any of the training, but
that's correct.
But if we abused it and said we want you in every week, you would
yes
for training.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's 300 grand is your resources. There are 5 people sat within Melton. That strikes me as quite a heavy subsidy that Melton are paying for this, yeah? Who uses your service the most? Where would South Kesteven sit in the league table of procurements amongst the 7?
To be honest with you, I wouldn't be able to answer that on the spot right now. I can provide you further information on that, but it's quite difficult to assess that on a pure data basis because, for example, on paper, it may be that South Kesteven has, let's say 4 projects, but that Melton has 10. But actually, the 10 Melton projects might all be low value, very what we'd call easy procurements, whereas 2 out of your 4 might be high level EU complex procurements that need a lot more of involvement in. So it's not quite a black and white response.
So I suppose there's 2 ways of measuring it. One is in pounds, shillings, and pence, how much spent, and one is in number of hours spent on that authority. I'll just try again. Are we towards the top of the list or towards the bottom of the list in terms of both of those metrics, pounds, shillings, and pence, and also the number of hours spent on procurement?
Okay, we don't record number of hours, so I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to comment accurately on that one. And in terms of how much spend, I don't have that information in front of me right now, but like with the other information, I can send that through to Alison for you.
But you are only a team of 5. You must know roughly who uses the system the most and who uses the system the least. There's only 7 councils. Fair enough, I'm not going to ask for a response there, but I would like some understanding as to whether... What we're trying to get at today is, are we getting our money's worth? Are we getting our 41 grand plus the part-time resource that this is costing us? Are we getting value for money? I mean, it is described as a mixed position. I mean, your feedback, I mean, there's 2 ways of reading your feedback. You could either read it as 95%, as you have done, or if you were to read it over the number of positive responses over 119 cases, it's actually 17%, which if you were to read it on that way, it wouldn't be such a positive picture. Why are you not getting the engagement from your feedback surveys?
So this is an annual satisfaction survey, and like I said, it's the first time that we've opened it out to all council officers that have had an involvement. And the 119 includes the lead officers, as well as all members all council staff across all of our 8 authorities that have had any involvement in procurement throughout the financial year. So it may be that someone's approached us about a piece of quotation advice 9 months before the annual satisfaction survey went out, for example, and that they just don't have time to respond or don't wish to respond. So those are issues that we're aware of and that we are looking to make improvements in the way that the survey is run for next year. But it's not an overly long survey. We did give our responders a month to complete it, so there was sufficient time to complete it. But obviously it's disappointing from our point of view as well that we only got a limited level of response on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it's so limited and the pool is so small that I'm not sure you can use that to claim that there's positive feedback there. Let's talk about the positives of Welland procurement. I mean, the real benefit from Welland procurement, and it's something that I expected you to spend more time on, shields us from procurement claims and what do you describe them as? Procurement actions or people challenges, procurement challenges. Have you ever been subject to a procurement challenge? Walk us through what would happen if we were subject to a procurement challenge and what Welland procurement would do for us.
Okay, so I've only been at Welland since September, so I can't comment on previously whether Welland has supported on challenges or not, but this financial year, or the last financial year, we had no challenges. Me personally, I have never been challenged on a procurement that I have run, but I am aware of a colleague that has. So in terms of how a challenge would come in, an unsuccessful bidder would normally request further feedback first of all, and would submit some queries around the thing that they were challenging, whether that's something to do with the procurement process, the evaluation, something like that. The council or Welland would look to the council to respond. So depending on the type of query, if it was leading towards a formal challenge, Welland would provide the information and normally a suggested response. It would go to the lead council officer, and what I mean by lead council officer in this context would be the person within the service area that has led on the procurement from the council's point of view, written the specification, etc. So we would run the response past them, and then we would always advise you to get your legal services to review the response before we send it. And the reason for that is that if we do end up in court, obviously you would need legal representation on this. So Welland would be able to provide the procurement information and justify the procurement process, and it would very much depend on what the challenge was on as to how our involvement would be, and what the involvement from the council would be needed.
So, okay, thank you for that. That was helpful. But just to, how long has Welland Procurement been in existence?
Oh gosh, several years. I'm sure
Okay.
I should probably know the answer to that one.
Yeah, years, millions of pounds worth of procurement, 7 councils. There was 9, 2 of them left. They've never been a challenge.
I can't say never. There hasn't been one last financial year. I don't believe there has been a challenge. Like I say, I've been in since September, so I can find out for you if you'd like, if there's never been a challenge.
I mean, that's what I'm failing to get on this report, actually. I mean, your feedback statistics and things, I mean, I just don't accept them. The pool is too small. What we pay Welland Procurement for is not feedback or training documents and things. We can get that everywhere. But if the worst case happened, if we found ourselves in court, then at that stage we would be happy to be paying Welland Procurement. And I just don't really get a picture of what that insurance policy looks like, what you would provide us, what would happen, what the damage to us could be, what the likelihood of that would be. And to be honest, I was expecting to see that in here. Your main reason for existence, frankly, I think your main reason for us using you is not really covered in here in a way that makes a sale to me.
Okay.
So if you can get some more information on that, I'd be interested. So 41 grand plus a part-time resource, based upon procurement of what is that, maths, 860. Sorry, in total it's £862,000 in a year, yeah? So that's an overhead of about 5% plus the costs of a local resource. That's an overhead of about 7 or 8%, yeah? Is that normal? Do the other councils have an overhead on procurement of about 8%? Strikes me as quite a high management fee to pay for procurement.
So, sorry, can you run through those figures again for me, Chair?
I'm at Appendix B on 13, the estimated annual value. We're paying an annual charge for Welland Procurement.
Yeah.
I've added up the 800, 24, 28 and 10 because I'm only interested in results. I'm not interested in the procurements that don't go ahead. Sure, I know you do lots of other fancy good stuff as well. But when it comes to the fundamental results, we're paying 41 grand plus a local resource to manage procurement of what, £862,000. Is that right?
Yes, if you take just the completed ones.
Yeah.
And obviously, I know you're saying you're only interested in results, but we do provide support still for all the ones that you have abandoned. Doesn't mean we haven't provided support on them. The ones that you've extended, as well as the ones going across 2 financial years.
And I agree with that, and we as a finance committee need to grill our cabinet as to why we're going down the route of doing procurement on all these things and it not coming to a conclusion. Maybe it's 2 years or 3 years, etc. But yeah, there's a conversation to be had there. But there's also the services around e-procurement and education and training. But fundamentally, there's a management overhead of about 8% on that. I wonder how that compares to your other councils.
So obviously the other councils obviously are paying the same. The majority of other councils don't have an internal resource alongside ourselves.
Oh, that's interesting. Why is that? Why is that? Why don't they have internal resources?
Probably they feel that Welland Procurement provides a sufficient resource, or they don't have some of the concerns that led to South Kesteven having that temporary resource. One of our authorities does have its own commissioning team that sits alongside us, so that obviously would be a much larger overhead than yourselves. So I think it's down to what each council requires and what Welland does or doesn't provide, and whether that meets the requirements of the council.
Thank you for that, Amy. Alison, can you comment on that answer? That why do we have the internal resource that other councils? What are the concerns that led us to needing an internal resource that other councils choose not to have? You're on mute again, Alison.
Sorry. One of the main reasons we took on a temporary resource was to specifically target the £300,000 savings that had been included in the budget. So that didn't form part of Procurement Lincolnshire's plan or Welland procurement plan. So there will be areas where they're specifically looking across the council and identifying perhaps where we don't have a contract in place, where we do have a contract in place, but could it be a wider contract? Could it include additional parts of services? Because then we could then achieve additional savings. Are there several activities that take place across several different departments within the council where we could then merge those into one contract to try to achieve additional savings? So they were brought in to specifically focus on the £300,000 savings that were included in the budget last year and the £350,000 savings that are included in the current financial year.
And they're outside the remit of Welland Procurement, is that right? Why?
Because they're actually looking for specific areas where they're looking across the council, they're looking at the councils, the spend the council's incurring with certain contractors. Have we got contracts in place? Are the potential savings that could be achieved on those contracts?
I see. So that actually is quite separate. Okay, thank you for that. That's helpful, Alison. Thank you for that, Amy. So again, I guess it comes back to I mean, procurement's tough in local government, and I would be interested in understanding a little bit more about how about the league table that you have between the various councils. Can I ask, why did the two councils leave Welland Procurement?
Corby, do you mean Corby?
So it's detailed in the report that two councils have left.
So do you mean East Northampton, Wellingborough that are due to leave?
Okay, sorry, yeah,
so
they're maybe due to leave.
They're due to leave, and that's because of unitary in Northamptonshire.
Okay.
So, okay. See, East Northamptonshire and the Borough Council of Wellingborough are both in Northamptonshire and will be part of, I believe, Northampton North. Now, Northamptonshire County Council currently buys into LGSS, so Local Government Shared Services procurement team. So it's anticipated that they will, however Northamptonshire looks in April next year, they will be getting their procurement services from the unitary.
Sure. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other members that would like to comment on this report or question any of the detail? Any other members of the committee? Okay. I will open it up. Councillor Baxter, you wanted to raise a question.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
We can do.
Cool. I think the main thing that Kesteven needs to think about with procurement is not so much whether we go with procurement, whatever they call themselves, or element procurement. It's about how much we use the service in the first place. When we were at the governance and audit meeting recently, the internal auditor said that our performance on procurement was awful. Many services within the council were doing their own procurement thing, and this was leading to problems. But problems not just in terms of the admin, but in terms of not obeying the law. And the very least that we need to be doing with our contracts is obeying the law. And the second least we need to be doing is obeying the law and abiding by our own procurement procedures. So it's all very well having external advice for procurement, but if we don't use it, and if our officers are either not minded to use it or not aware that they're supposed to be using it, it's a bigger problem than where we get the advice from.
I think that's a general point, although Alison or Councillor Stokes, do you want to comment on that?
No. We'll let Alison go, and then I will come in on a bit on that, please, as well, please.
Alison? You're on mute again. Your mute button's stuck.
I'm going to stop putting myself on mute. I think that was recognised that there was issues with that internal procurement, and that's why we've got the support from Welland, we've got the support from the internal procurement officer to address the issues, to ensure that the council does follow proper procurement regulations going forwards, and that all contracts are procured in a compliant way.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stokes, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I do think Alison's covered the point there quite well. But I do believe that internal audit will notice going forward that we do have procurement high on our agenda to make sure that everything is done properly. But I do take quite offence to some of the comments that Councillor Baxter said. However, we are doing our best to get things moving forward in a better way. Thank you.
Okay, well, if there are no further questions, I'd like to move on. But with that, I'd like to thank Amy for coming in and answering those questions. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Amy. If my thanks can be minuted there, that's great. I would like to move on to the housing revenue account, item 7 on the agenda, and this is also in the hands of Alison. But Councillor Stokes, do you want to introduce this?
Yes, I will do. Thank you, Chairman. So this agenda item 7 is the HRA Financial Business Plan, and this report provides a summary of the HRA 30-year financial business plan, which is the requirement of the HRA self-financing system that was introduced in 2012. And you'll notice that Appendix A, we do have the 30-year finance forecast, which is a nice, exciting spreadsheet for everyone to read. But I'll hand over now to Alison to go through it in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as Councillor Stokes has said, the HRA, when it in 2012, the subsidy system was replaced with a self-financing system. And under the self-financing system, the council was required to produce a 30-year business plan. And part of this business plan is a financial plan, which you could view it as it's very similar to a cash flow. It shows the income and expenditure that's expected to be incurred by the HRA and ensures that it's financially sustainable. So under the self-financing system, the council is required to make a one-off payment to government of roughly £122 million. This was associated with the debt that related to our council housing stock. The council currently has £93 million of borrowing outstanding. Under the self-financing system, the difference was the council is able to retain the income that's received from dwellings, but then it has to reinvest this into the council houses. So the financial plan supports the housing strategy. It ensures that there's a financially long-term, robust financial plan to support the delivery of the housing strategy. When we produce the financial plan, there are certain assumptions that we have to include. The model's updated on an annual basis, so it factors in the outturn position. When we're going through the budget setting process, we will update it for estimated income and expenditure information to ensure that the affordability of this affordability of the future plans. So paragraph 2.4 details the assumptions that are included when producing the plan. So we look at, we utilise historical information, we'll use assumed future changes. So the main point, if I just cover some of these briefly, so we'll include the number of anticipated right to buy applications because this will impact on the rental income that we'll receive. The current assumption is 50 per year. We've based this on the number of right to buys that have been sold over the last few years. We'll factor in the number of new build properties because this will replace the income lost through right to buys, although historically members will be aware that the number of new builds hasn't kept pace with the number of properties lost through right to buy. We will profile the major repairs programme, so when kitchens and bathrooms need to be replaced in properties, as this is major expenditure. We'll include inflationary increases on rental income and repairs expenditure. And then we also factor in the void rate. So because if a property is void, then it means there's then a loss of income to the HRA business plan. So if we now move to page 35, this details the 30-year cash flow for the HRA. And I'll just go through the main points to highlight in here. So columns 1 to 5 detail the income that's going to be received on an annual basis into the HRA. The main points to note are that in 2023-24, we expect to receive £2 million affordable rent income. The date of the income is being reviewed, will be reviewed once the project timeline for the new build programme has been updated. The other main change is on the interest receivable. In 1920 we received 391,000, but members can see that in 23-24 we're only projecting to receive 119,000. This is due to the reserve investment in the new build programme. So because the level of reserves reduces, the level of interest will reduce for the HRA. But we also now need to revisit this due to COVID and the reduction in interest rates. So that now needs to be factored into the business plan as well, because we'll expect to receive less interest as interest rates will be lower. Columns 6 to 14 detail the expenditure that's incurred by the HRA. So members will note in column 8, we have a depreciation figure in there. So in the general fund, depreciation's reversed out so that it doesn't have an impact on the council taxpayer. It's not reversed out in the HRA, but this figure is transferred to the major repairs reserve so that we can then finance the major repairs going forwards. We're setting aside monies for future capital expenditure. In column 10, there's also a major reserves transfer. This is an allowance that we have to charge to the HRA on an annual basis. Again, this is transferred to the major repairs reserve to then finance future capital expenditure. In column 12, we have the annual loan principal repayments that we make each year. This is the payment associated with the EIP loan, so the equal instalment payment loan that was taken out, linked to the self-financing. And then in 34-35, we will expect to repay £28 million. This is because the £25 million replacement maturity loan, which was taken out in March of 2020, will mature. And then if we move to page 36, this then details the HRA reserves. So the surplus or deficit from each year is transferred to the reserve balances. And then in column 4, we show the reserve balance carried forward. In column 3, members will note that this significant reduction of movement from the reserves, this again relates to the new build programme. So this is the financing of the new build programme that was approved by council in March of this 2020. Columns 5 to 6 detail the major repairs reserve. So you'll note that in columns 5 and 6, these reflect the depreciation and the major repairs transfers from the business plan on page 35. We then factor in future capital expenditure, and then we then know what the balance brought forward, carried forward on the major repairs reserve is, and this then ensures that we can cover the costs of major repairs going forward. As the council is aware, we are monitoring the impact of COVID-19 on the HRA. Currently the highest risk area is the rental income and tenants' ability to pay their weekly rent. This is being monitored on a monthly basis. There's currently no adverse impact, but obviously we will keep monitoring this, and then we will factor any changes into the business plan going forwards. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to quickly move to questions, please. First of all, Councillor Dilks.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I was on mute. And I did have to run away for part of the presentation, so I do apologise. My questions was on, first of all, on right to buy, and I just wondered if we could get an indication, perhaps not now, but later, on the total net loss of property over, year on year. I appreciate it's, we estimate 50 a year, but I just wondered, over the period of right to buy, how many have we lost, and how many have we? And I appreciate that we haven't been able to replace them on a one-for-one basis, but how many have we been able to replace them by? And what is the plan to build? How many, if I can call them council houses, do we expect to build year on year in the coming years? Would be my main question. And secondly, I'd just like to ask if there's any plan to improve how we deal with voids in terms of redecorating and making them look smart before a new tenant moves in. My sense is, and forgive me if this is not quite on the agenda, but my sense is that we, having seen some new tenants in their houses, that we don't exactly build pride in our stock when we hand over, when we don't spend much money, if any, on making sure things are right before people move in. Thank you.
On the first point, are those figures that you would have to hand, or would it be more considered to get a spreadsheet of those figures?
That's what I'm asking for, I think.
Yeah.
I can produce a spreadsheet of those figures. Do you want them from April 2012 when we entered the self-financing system?
I'd be happy from that period, but thank you, yes.
Okay, thank you. On the second point about the management of the portfolio, is that something that you want to comment on, or is that something that...
I'll take that, Graham, Chairman. Yeah, if we can pass that question on to Councillor Robert Reid, who will be able to provide a full and detailed response. If we can get that in the action notes, we can make sure that happens. Thank you.
I think that's...
The build, is that Adam? Sorry?
That was regarding the voids that you commented on, and the
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the numbers projected that we build is within that data that you're going to provide.
I think that should be in a spreadsheet. Yeah. I think because that's more detailed than can be expected on the spot. But thank you for the point, Councillor Dilks. That has been noted. And we should expect that. Okay, if there's no follow-up to that, Councillor Dilks, I'll move on to Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just put a clarification on the spreadsheet, if possible, Alison. I'm presuming that all the numbers in the spreadsheet on page, well, it would be page 35. I'm assuming they're all at 1920 prices, and you've not done any discounting, and you've not done any DCF forecasting on there. It's assumed that the present value of the cash flows will stay the same at 1920 values. Is that correct?
They've been inflated year on year by an assumed rate.
It would be really, really useful for a bit of clarity to sort of know what those rates are actually.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I'm trying to sort of work the numbers through, and I noticed there's some discrepancies, and I'm struggling to sort of figure out. I thought that, well, the only explanation could be that there's been some there's been some operating in the numbers, so that'd be quite useful.
Yeah.
And then on to the second table, which I guess would be page 36. In the major repairs reserve, I can see that, for instance, take 1920, that the balance brought forward was 12.6 million, and it's going to end the year 14.2. I can see the net in-year movement of 1.6 is the difference between those two figures. But then when I look across at the other three columns there, it's trying to understand how those make up the 1633, and I'm struggling a little bit with that. So,
if you take the 2883, add on the 3415, because they're the transfers to reserves, and then take off the capital expenditure.
That again, it would be really, really useful if
I should have put those in brackets.
Thanks, Alison. Yeah, it's just two or three technical things really on the spreadsheets, which would just have stopped me asking some really the typical sort of counters questions that I'm struggling to figure out. Thanks, Alison. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from members of the committee? Okay, I have a couple of quick basic points. You mentioned the EIP terms, which is the loan. Is that a fixed interest rate loan we have there?
Yes, when you take them out, with the loans we have with PWLB are all fixed interest rates. We've got the EIP and the maturity loan.
So if interest rates go to 8%, we don't need to stress test this model?
No.
Okay, and can we exit those loans early?
There's normally there's a penalty for exiting early, which is normally more than you would save if you were to take out an interest rate at a lower rate.
Yeah. What rates were they taken out at?
I'll double check, but the EIP I believe is 3.03%, and the £25 million loan is 1.69%.
Perhaps that's unfair for you to put that on the spot. Can you locate those figures and just clarify that, just in case I'm putting you on the spot unnecessarily there? I mean, the reason I say that is that actually, if you look at our cash flow, or the housing revenue account cash flow, we could actually go debt free. We could actually go debt free if we wanted to. It's a decision to stay indebted, even though at very low interest rates. But it wouldn't be impossible for us to actually repay our loan and save ourselves 3% on however many million a year, which I know is not mega bucks, but it's something that it's a choice that's been made in this business plan. I think it probably is the right choice. But that brings me to my broader point. It's kind of a business plan. I mean, don't take this as a criticism, but it's a business plan that's been prepared by accountants. There's no kind of preamble on the front that details the choices that have gone into this business plan. And perhaps this is a comment for Robert Reid rather than the cabinet member. Robert Reid, rather than for yourself, Alison, or yourself, Adam. I think that there are choices in this business plan that we've made. There are assumptions in this business plan that we've made. Actually, I think that you've made a good presentation, and that they're probably on balance the right choices and assumptions. But actually, I think I was expecting a kind of a cover sheet that's kind of, covered in South Kesteven logos about how we're managing the council resources, and these are the choices that we've made to manage them in a sensible way. And that's the bit that, as I say, probably is with Councillor Robert Reid, but that's the bit. It's a business plan without the kind of explanation of the plan, if you see what I mean. There's something I'm missing from this report. Even though, as I say, I can't find fault with the numbers. I think the numbers are great. The explanations are great. You obviously are on top of the brief, but the kind of, what choices we've made to manage and to maintain and to protect the resources of the ratepayers of South Kesteven are not really explained. Do you want to take that, Councillor Stokes, or do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I will take that comment. I mean, these are prepared by accountants, as being an accountant myself. And these are very good spreadsheets. I mean, what I would say is that we will have taken, and decisions will have been made along the lines that you've said, but we chose, and the decision has been taken to refinance because the interest rates are so low, and we do want to invest in the housing stock, maybe build more housing stock. So we've got to look at having some cash available to do that. And if we utilised all the money to repay the loan, which you never know what the government think with having to take out another loan for our own stock again. You never know. So we just wanted to cover all bases to enable us to have the flexibility to have cash flow available.
So I agree with all that, and they're good explanations. But you see my point that there should be a public document that, okay, it doesn't need to be a 25-page business plan for the kind of thing that we're going to be talking about this afternoon in the company's workshop. But what it does need to kind of explain the choices, the details that for public consumption, the positive stewardship of local resources. Do you see what I mean?
But I think the document it's the housing strategy, because this financial plan supports the housing strategy, which is presented at the community OSC. So this does support the housing strategy, which was last reviewed by Cabinet on the 9th of July in 2019. So this is a document that supports the strategy that's produced by housing.
And so the choices that Councillor Stokes has just mentioned there, they're the kind of choices that are detailed in that document.
Well, the choice over the borrowing was because we want to invest in our housing stock. So the decision was made not to repay a loan because we were able to access preferential rates. Because if we took out a loan now, we would then be able to finance the new build programme using our own resources, and we knew what rate we could get today. The rate on a new loan is 1.69%, and it's 0.3% lower than the rate on the loan that matured. So it was deemed a good financial decision to replace that loan. So then we've then got the resources to invest going forwards in the council housing stock.
Okay, fair enough. I'm grateful for that response, and as I say, I think my points are noted. Even though, as I say, I don't think there's I welcome the report, and I'm grateful for the detail. If there are no further questions, I would like to move on. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Alison. Thank you for that, Councillor Stokes. I'd like to move on to item number 8, the financial impact and budget monitoring report, which again is in the hands of Alison. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The third report from us today on this all-encompassing committee. So this is the latest financial position for 2021, and this, with regards to the budget framework, as a result of the financial impact of the COVID-19 crisis, and provides financial information up to and including the 30th of June. What I should make clear to the committee is only 15 days from the last report at your last committee, so you're looking at the extra 15 days. But I will say that the report provides up-to-date funding announcements from government and provides an updated forecast deficit of around 2.2 million, which is a massive reduction from the last report. But I'll allow Alison to go through the report with you now. Thank you.
Alison, if I can ask you to make your comments quite brief to detail the changes, please, because we are running a little bit late on time. Thank you, Alison.
Okay, so this is the third report we've presented to you. In paragraph 2.2, table 1, we detail the forecast overspend at the net cost of service of 3.9 million, and the government grants received to date of 1.7 million have reduced this to 2.2 million. This is a slightly improved position because income projections have improved by 400,000, and we've also identified savings throughout the budget monitoring for period quarter 1 forecasting. So if we move to the table in paragraph 2.3, table 2. Table 2 details out the the income and expenditure variances. So line 1, we presented these to you on the 30th of June 2020. The breakdown remains unchanged. We've got projected income figures at line 2. They're more detailed in Appendix A. As I stated before, these are slightly improved than they were previously. We've received some additional income, which has improved the position by the estimated position by 400,000. We've then received some additional income, which has reduced the forecast overspend. So we've had increased demand on green waste, and we've got increased rental income due to a letting opportunity on St Peter's Hill. Section 4 details the expenditure items that we've identified savings. So we've got £700,000 within supplies and services. We're receiving income from the employees that have been furloughed, so we'll continue to update this figure as further claims are submitted. We've got £100,000 saving from the Gravity Fields Festival, and some business rate savings on leisure centres due to the reliefs that were introduced by government earlier in the year. We have got a salary vacancy target of 428, but we're estimating that we'll underachieve this by 140,000 at the minute. And government funding has increased to 1.7 million rather, and a further breakdown is provided in Table 5. Section 2.4 provides details on the fees and charges. As you're aware, income has been significantly impacted by COVID-19. So what this table is showing you, it's showing you the gross income budget, the income we would have expected to have received to date, which is 1.7 million. But we've only actually received 764, so that's a shortfall of approximately 915,000. And then the right-hand column is showing the proposed amended gross income budget amendments to reduce the budgets down to 3.6 to reflect the level of income that we're anticipating to receive. But obviously we have to keep reviewing this as the situation changes with the economy frequently. Section 3. The General Fund Housing and Housing Revenue Account capital programmes. These are currently under review to determine whether any of the schemes can be deferred or postponed. This is just in order to ease the pressure on financing, and this will be presented to Cabinet on the 8th of September. Section 4 details the revenue budget for the HRA. Members will see that we've got an improved surplus position on the HRA account. This is mainly due to the delay in repairs due to COVID. So repairs have been delayed by 3 months, so therefore we anticipate there'll be a saving, improving the surplus by 223,000. Section 5 provides an updated government funding position. So the government announced a further £500 million of funding to cover local authority spending pressures. South Kesteven have received £194,000 from that. They're introducing a scheme to compensate local authorities for irrecoverable income. We're still waiting for further details of this scheme to be released, so we're unclear of the categories that will be included within the scope of reimbursement, but once we've got further information we'll update this committee further. And they've also introduced a phased repayment of collection fund deficits, which is we normally have to repay that in 1 year, but they're allowing us to spread that over 3 years. Table 5 details the 3 tranches of funding that we've received from government, and then Section 6 provides an update on the cash flow modelling. As you're aware, we are modelling the cash flow. It's reviewed on a daily basis. We've included an update at Appendix B. The cash flow is showing a positive position and collection rates are performing strongly. We're continuing to benchmark ourselves alongside other authorities. Table 6 gives a comparison of our collection rate in June 2019 to June 2020. Members will see that the collection rates for council tax and business rates are slightly lower than they were this time last year, and slightly improved for rents, although rents depends on the number of rents weeks in a year, so can fluctuate year on year, but we're not expecting any adverse variance. We will be presenting an amended budget in August to joint for budget proposals to joint budget overview and scrutiny committee on the 26th of August. An amended budget will then be presented to Cabinet on the 8th of September and then to Council on the 17th of September for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are running a little bit over time, so if you can keep your questions and comments business-like, please. Councillor Whittington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Alison, thank you very much for a very detailed report. Just one real point. You know, we're looking at a deficit, budget deficit, because of COVID of about 2.3 billion pounds. And I guess that potentially that's the sort of the figure we're looking to sort of have to find a way of funding in the emergency budget proposals. But I suppose the thing that we don't know is how much we're going to get back from the income sort of guarantee scheme, the 75% scheme. It must be difficult at the moment because obviously if that comes in, that may cover quite a bit of that 2.2 gap. Just your comments on that, and any ideas as to when we're going to get notification of how that scheme might work, because obviously that could have a real impact upon how the emergency budget measures and proposals are being put together. Apart from that, it's a very, very good detailed report. Thanks, Alison.
So we can model what if we would receive, how much we think we may receive. So if we include different income streams, which income streams do we think will be included? We know, we suspect, so we'll factor all of that in, carry out some sensitivity analysis, because then that will give a range of where we would expect that 2.3 million to reduce once we actually get confirmation from the scheme. But you are right, it's very, very difficult because we've got to be prudent, because we don't know what the recovery looks like going forwards, what the long-term position is, because this 2.3 million is based on our projections going forwards. But if the economy doesn't recover as we're expecting it to, then actually that figure, the income projections, may not be as high as what we've actually anticipated. Currently, I'm not aware that government has announced when the guidelines for the scheme will be announced, but obviously we'll update you once they have been, and we'll set up a spreadsheet so that we can model that as soon as the information is received on the income streams that it will cover.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks very much. And I guess the general recovery of the economy potentially could affect your collection rates later in the year. I'm not so much thinking around business rates, but I'm thinking in terms of around council tax, especially if unemployment was potentially increased. Because I know some of the economic figures that the Bank of England recently published, you know, potentially we could be to quite severe recession. And if people aren't working, they may struggle to pay bills, of which council tax could potentially be one of those. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we'll save the economic predictions for commentators on the news, but I appreciate the point. Thank you, Councillor Whittington. Are there any other questions from other members of the committee? Okay, I do appreciate that this is only 15 days on from the previous picture. It still remains very detailed. It's still yeah, we're grateful for this level of detail. Thank you for that. Just one small comment, and I think I'll answer this for myself. You've dropped the risk register. I'm guessing that's just simply because there wasn't the time to kind of do the added work on it in the 15 days. So if that's the case, can we make sure that when we next see this report, we do get back that risk register, because we wanted some more information on that, a slightly lower level of risk.
Can I come in on that, Chairman, please?
Councillor Stokes.
Yeah, it hasn't been included in this committee, but it is for some amendments, but it will be presented at the September meeting, so it will be at the next meeting.
That's fine. I'm happy with that. I mean, as you rightly say, this is only 15 days different from the previous report. So if there are no other questions from committee members, I'm going to move on from this. Thanks again for the level of detail. We're moving on to the work programme. Several issues came up on the work programme in the last meeting when we were looking at the outturn reports. Mark and I met to add these to the work programme. Some of it's logical, some of it's a little bit arbitrary. I think rather than discuss that now, if you do want to forward your comments to Mark and myself, we'll try and incorporate your comments to the work programme, unless anybody has anything desperate that they want to change immediately. I'll take the silence as no. So if you can review the work programme, as I say, some of that is still able to be changed. Okay, so I'd like to move on from the work programme. Is there, just on the work programme, I'm grateful for the inclusion of the Cabinet's forward plan. I think that also helps us in considering the work programme, so thank you for that. Item 10 on the agenda, does anybody else have any other business? Okay, I think with silence that means that the only other business we can think of is our lunch. So I'm going to, it's 12:39, I'm going to call the meeting to a close. Thank you everyone for the reports and thank you for your questions today.